Welcome to the Right Academy. I'm Matthew Miller. Writing a story, whether that's a short story, a book, even a poem, fiction, nonfiction, it has to have the good elements of a good story, or else it's going to be boring. Okay. Now, there are many ways to write a story. Of course, there's not just one specific way, but it's a lot more than just stringing scenes along or having characters do things. In fact, it's something that you really need to think about and plan out before you want to do it. If you want to write a book, and you've never done it before or you're just starting out, it's important to learn about something called the hero's journey. Now, the hero's journey is something that Joseph Campbell, the scholar, professor, folklorist, linguist, I believe he's all those things, found that when he studied the great works of literature throughout all of human history, all cultures everywhere, stories have the same basic elements. It's a process of things that happen in a story. It's not the only way to write the story. There's a 3-act story, and there's other ways too. The hero's journey, though, is something we see in these great stories, and it involves, as it might indicate, a hero. The hero is the main character. Now, the hero has to go through a transformation, and if you can learn the hero's journey and pattern your work on it, it's going to become a good story. Okay, so here's what the hero's journey means. It's a 3-part story. The 3 main parts are simple. Number 1, the departure. Number 2, the initiation. And number 3, the return. Now, each one of these has steps within it. So you start off with the departure. Number 1, the first part of this is called the ordinary world. Now, a hero can't start out being a hero, or it's a shallow, boring character. A main character needs to have flaws, be rich, complex, have problems, have difficulties. And so the hero begins in the ordinary world. It's just their mundane, everyday life. I've used as examples Harry Potter, that series, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, that series. These all very classically exemplify the hero's journey. So the ordinary world, Harry Potter lives under some stairs. He's got a pretty rough life. He's just a regular boy, right? The Hobbit, right? Bilbo Baggins just living in his hobbit hole, enjoying life, smoking pipes, drinking tea, being lazy, and that's their everyday life. Okay, you have to start there and make them ordinary, because the most interesting hero is one that doesn't want to be a hero, one that starts off as a regular person, because the reader can say, hey, that's kind of like me, and they can imagine themselves in that world. Next step on the departure is number 2, the call to adventure. Something shows up, a person, an event, that shakes up this ordinary world. And we call this the call to adventure. Now, whether the adventure is a literal journey, like in The Hobbit, whether it's just a learning process, like Harry Potter, it is a transformation. That's the definition here of adventure. The hero somehow is prompted, asked to leave this ordinary world and enter a strange world that they don't know about. For Harry Potter, that's going to be Hogwarts, right? For Bilbo Baggins, that's going to be leaving the Shire and going into the Middle Earth and Mordor and all this stuff. Eventually, with Frodo carrying on the tradition. Now, the hero at the call to adventure must refuse the call. They don't want to go. The reluctant hero is an interesting kind of hero, because the reader can identify with it. So the hero doesn't want to go. Think about, Harry Potter finds it hard to believe. What are you talking about? I'm a wizard. I think about Bilbo. He definitely doesn't want to go, doesn't want to leave the comfort of his home. They refuse the call. They say, no thanks, not going to happen. I'll just stay here and be happy. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes insecurity, sometimes just they feel like they have a duty, maybe to their family. Maybe they have comfort that they don't want to give up. Next step, number 4, is the meeting with the mentor. The mentor is a character in the book who is a teacher for the main character, a helper. Who in the Hobbit is the helper? Obviously, Gandalf. What about Harry Potter? It's Dumbledore, right? The hero has to meet the mentor. And now this mentor is going to be someone who often has experience, often is older or wiser, though not necessarily, but they know something the hero doesn't. They're going to help the hero. Now, it's important not to make the mentor the main character. The mentor's purpose is simply to help the main character, to teach them, okay? So that you're meeting with the mentor, this is where you're going to have that wise person come and give you some advice or protection, or if you're writing fantasy, magic, or something like that. Next, the hero reaches a point that we call crossing the threshold to the special world. Okay. This is the last part of the number one, the departure stage. The hero decides, okay, whether they're forced to, pulled, dragging and kicking, drag kicking and screaming, or whether they do it voluntarily, they're going to leave that ordinary world, cross some kind of a barrier into the new world. For Bilbo Baggins, he has to leave the Shire for the first time, right? He has to step across that boundary and go farther than he's ever gone. That's his crossing. And one of the first events in The Hobbit is when they meet the trolls in the forest, right, who kidnap them, and they're going to eat them, and they wait till sunrise, and the trolls turn into stone. That's kind of his crossing over. For Harry Potter, it's going to Hogwarts, crossing over to that special world. Now, the mentor can lead the hero to this threshold, but the hero must cross on their own. Okay? They have to decide at some point to cross it. Often the threshold is guarded. There's some kind of a guardian or a gatekeeper, and the hero has to prove themselves worthy for this to happen. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a villain. It can be just a test. Think of the Sphinx in the old Egyptian stories. You had to answer the riddle of the Sphinx to enter into the next world. Okay, now we're to the second part, which is the initiation. So the departure, the initiation, the return. Okay, the initiation begins with what we call tests, allies, and enemies. This is where the hero is going to meet friends, going to meet enemies, and go through a lot of trials, tribulations, tests. Let's consider Harry Potter, right? Meets friends, Ron and Hermione, enemies, Draco Malfoy and his goons, and of course, Lord Voldemort eventually. And a lot of trials and tests, right? Harry's got to not only get through his classes, but he also has to deal with attacks from trolls and Boggarts and eventually Lord Voldemort. Okay. So this is where it's important here that the hero win some and lose some. If a hero is winning everything, it's a boring, shallow character. It's not real. Okay. They have to lose some and get pulled down very low so they can rise up again. The friends are going to help them along. Think of how Ron and Hermione helped Harry. But the hero is going to have to learn and transform. This is a process of transformation. Okay. The next step, approach to the innermost cave. There's going to be a main goal or a major obstacle or challenge in this special world. Okay, so for the Lord of the Rings series, the whole series, you have Frodo taking the ring to Mordor, and they throw it in the fire. For Harry Potter, I suppose the major challenge is each book has a challenge, right? The Chamber of Secrets, the Sorcerer's Stone, but the whole series has defeating Lord Voldemort. Okay, so you can look at this as a story by story, book by book, or as an entire series. But there's going to be a difficulty. So in the first one, it's finding the Sorcerer's Stone. The friends and the hero go towards this challenge. Okay, this place they know they have to go. They may even not want to go at this point, but this is where the hero is going to prove themselves worthy. The next step is the ordeal. We call it the ordeal. This is the big test, the big fight, the big showdown with the bad guy, with the enemy. Okay, think about it a little bit, maybe like a boss or a final boss in a video game, if you like gaming. This is where the bad guy, the antagonist, we call the hero the protagonist, we call the bad person the antagonist. And everything the hero's been through, the trials, the tests, the things they've learned, have to be used now to confront this. At this point, there needs to be some major death, and it could be physical death. The hero can die. Harry Potter died, right, at one point. And there needs to be rebirth, death and rebirth. But it doesn't have to be literal. It can be a symbolic death and rebirth. Think about Beowulf, if you're familiar with that story. Beowulf literally has to go down under the ground into a hole and fight Grendel and then come back again reborn. So it could be literal, it could be figurative. There has to be a death and a rebirth at this point. Now, the next step, the reward, okay? This is the last stage of the initiation. The reward, well, the hero gets what they were coming for. Defeating the enemy, getting a special potion, getting a gold coin, whatever it is they're seeking out. And this doesn't only apply to fantasy, it can apply to horror, realism, anything. It doesn't even have to be something material. Maybe it can be love. Maybe it can be a realization. but there has to be some reward for defeating the antagonist, and the hero gets it. Now, the return, stage 3. First step, the road back. Okay, the hero has to start back on the road to the ordinary world, going back home, so to speak. But it needs to be dangerous. It can't just be the hero going and having a lovely walk through the park and then they're home and that's it. The book's over. That's anticlimactic. What we need is the hero to return from the journey, but on that return, either the antagonist comes back. Think of, if you like the Scream series of horror movies, think of Ghostface. You thought you killed him, but he stands up again and there he's back. Or it can be a chase, right? But often here, the antagonist, the bad guy, has come back stronger and more powerful. And so either the hero has to either run and escape the chase, or they have to defeat the antagonist a second time. Okay, that's absolutely possible. Okay, next step, the resurrection. Here, if you remember we talked about, the death and rebirth and the ordeal. In the resurrection, it's that same thing, but it's even greater, okay? Whether this resurrection be literal, figurative, the hero now is a new person. They can never return to the person they once were. Harry Potter can never again become that boy living under the stairs who doesn't know anything about the magical world. He's gone too far, right? He can never go back to that. Finally, there is what's called the return with the elixir. Okay. Hero returns home. They've defeated the bad guy. They've gotten the reward. They've become a new person, a transformed person. And now the hero's back in the ordinary world, but they're never the same again. Whatever they went to seek and find, they have, and they're going to use that to transform the ordinary world into something great. Okay, they're going to help people other than themselves. It's important that the hero, the hero essentially is a good character, right? I guess you could have an anti-hero villain. That'd be a little bit different than the hero's journey, but the hero basically is the good person. The hero is the one who's going to do things for others. So you return with the elixir, you take this treasure, and you change the ordinary world to something better. That's the hero's journey, and it makes for a great story. Now, we see this throughout human history and all sorts of tales, folk tales from all over the world, Africa, Asia, Mesopotamia, the Americas. We see it over and over again. Why? Why do we see this? When people write stories, they don't always intentionally set out to write the hero's journey. It just seems to be something that's a part of who we are as humans. We tell stories not just for entertainment, but to learn something about ourselves. Think about our ancient ancestors sitting around the fire at night, darkness around them, the call of predators, and they don't understand this world. They tell stories not just to pass the time before they go to bed, but to understand who they are as people, as a culture, as a group, as a society, and to learn things about how to survive. So this telling stories is very important. So if you plan to be a writer, or if you're just starting out, or even if you're an experienced writer, using the hero's journey is a great way to develop a really good story. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be something the reader can relate to, and it really immerses them in that world. Can you think of any other examples of literature you've read that follows the hero's journey? Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your own comments and thoughts. I said this is not the only way to write a story, but it's a really great way. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. And thanks for watching the Write Right Academy with me, Matthew Miller.